Picture an old man sitting alone on a porch, a rifle leaning against the wall behind him, a dog curled at his feet, and a house so quiet you can hear the floorboard settle. That man is Avery Ludlow. Everyone in town just calls him Avenue. He's a war veteran, a widower, and the owner of the only general store for miles. And by the end of this story, you will understand exactly why a grown man's entire world can collapse over the death of a single dog. Because this isn't really a movie about a dog. It's a movie about how far grief can push a quiet, decent man once he has absolutely nothing left to lose. At the beginning of the movie, we are introduced to Ave living a life that looks peaceful from the outside but is quietly held together by routine. His big house used to be filled with family. Now it's just him. The only living thing that still needs him, and the only one he still needs, is his old dog, Red. We learn that Red isn't just a pet. Red was a gift from Ave's late wife, and in a way, the dog is the last living piece of a life Ave lost years ago, a life the film hasn't shown us yet but keeps hinting at through Ave's silences and the empty rooms of his house. By day, Ave runs his general store with the help of a younger employee named Emma, who clearly respects him and worries about how alone he seems. By evening, it's just him, Red, a porch, and the sound of nothing. We watch him fish, walk the dog, close up the shop, and repeat it all again the next day. It's a simple existence, but there's something almost fragile about how carefully he protects it, like he knows that if this routine ever breaks, there won't be anything left to catch him. One quiet Sunday morning, Red wakes Ave up early, tail wagging, practically dragging him out of bed. Ave feeds him, grabs his fishing gear, and the two of them head out for what looks like just another ordinary day. Emma sends them off with a cooler for the road, and Ave and Red drive out to a spot by the lake that clearly means something to him. He sets up his rod in the shade, sits back, and just breathes. For a few hours, it's the two of them and the sound of water. Ave even lets himself drift into memory, thinking about everything he survived, and how much of that survival he owes to the dog sitting beside him. Then 3 teenage boys show up. Brothers Danny and Harold McCormick, and their friend Pete, fresh off a failed deer hunt and clearly looking to blow off some frustration. At first, it's just mocking small talk. They notice Red is getting old. They ask if Ave's got any cash on him. It seems like the kind of moment that ends with nothing more than wounded pride. Ave senses where this is heading, though, and tries to keep things calm, even quieting Red down when the dog starts growling at the tension in the air. Then Danny asks for the money in Ave's wallet, sitting back in his truck. Ave won't put his rod down to go get it. Danny gets angrier. And in a moment that comes out of absolutely nowhere, with no warning and no build-up, Danny raises his shotgun and shoots Red in the head. Just like that. No robbery. No struggle. A dog is dead over a wallet that was never even touched. Danny laughs about it. Pete laughs about it. Harold, visibly sick to his stomach, says nothing, too afraid of his own brother to speak up. And Avenue, a man who has clearly survived worse than this and knows how to keep his composure under pressure, is left standing there in stunned silence as the boys casually walk off like they just tossed away a soda can. What follows is one of the most devastating scenes in the entire film. Ave checks on Red, already knowing there's no hope, and still tries anyway. He carries his best friend's body back to the truck. And then, just steps from the driver's seat, it finally catches up to him. He collapses to his knees, alone in the woods, and cries in a way that tells you this loss has cracked open something much older and much deeper than grief over a dog. That night, he buries Red under a tree in his own backyard. The next morning, Ave wakes up hoping, just for a second, that yesterday was a nightmare. It wasn't. He stands over that fresh grave, haunted by memories of everyone else he's already buried in his life, and makes a decision. He's not going to let this go. He finds the spent shotgun shell from the scene, figures out exactly what kind of weapon fired it, and starts making calls. That search leads him to a local gun shop, where the clerk initially refuses to hand over customer information, until Ave explains what that gun was used for. A kind older man at the counter, moved by Ave's story, shares his own memory of a dog that once saved his life, and it's enough to soften the room. Moments later, Ave has a name, Danny McCormick, just 18 years old. So Avenue does the responsible thing first. He goes straight to Danny's father, Michael McCormick, a man with money and influence in town, expecting some kind of accountability. Instead, he gets flat denial. Danny claims he wasn't even near the lake that day. Michael brushes Ave off entirely, treating him like a confused old man chasing the wrong kids. Frustrated but not defeated, Ave goes to his lawyer, Sam Berry, hoping the law can do what a father's conscience wouldn't. But Sam delivers a cold dose of reality. without a witness or hard evidence, it's Ave's word against 3 teenagers, and killing a dog barely qualifies as a real crime in the eyes of the system. Even the local sheriff shrugs it off. Back at the store, Ave breaks the news to Emma, who's horrified that a boy could do something so senselessly cruel and get away with it just as easily. That night, alone in his house, Ave senses something. A presence outside. By the time he reaches the window, a car is already speeding off into the dark. Someone's watching him now too. The next stretch of the film is Ave refusing to accept there's nothing you can do. Sam, despite his earlier hesitation, comes back with new information. He's dug up details on the McCormick family, and he's identified the 3rd boy at the lake, Pete Doust. Ave heads straight to Pete's house, only to be met with the same wall of denial from his parents. Nobody in this town wants to admit what actually happened by that lake. But then something shifts. Sam introduces Ave to a local journalist named Carrie, who becomes convinced this story deserves more attention than a police report that's going nowhere. Over dinner, she lays out her plan bluntly: if the legal system won't take this seriously, maybe the public will. She wants to film Ave telling his story exactly where it happened. So Avenue takes her and her crew back to the lake and recounts, in painful detail, watching his dog die for no reason at all. It airs on the local news. And for a moment, it feels like something might finally change. Instead, it escalates. One night, while Carrie is at Ave's house showing him the broadcast on a television she brought over specifically because he didn't own one, a rock comes flying through his window. Outside, a car speeds away, its passengers shouting threats, furious that Ave dared to go public. The message is clear: back off, or there will be consequences. Ave doesn't back off. He and Carrie go to the district attorney the next morning, hoping the news coverage will finally force some kind of prosecution. Instead, they're told the case is being deprioritized in favor of other stories. Carrie is livid, feeling like her own credibility is being wasted chasing a story her own bosses don't want told. That night, drowning their frustration together, Ave and Carrie end up back at his house, and in a moment fueled by alcohol and exhaustion, Carrie asks a question she probably shouldn't have. Something about his past. And Avenue, for the first time in the entire film, actually answers. He tells her about his son. About a boy who was different from the moment he was born, who came home one night looking for money, and who, when his mother refused, set the house on fire around her. Ave describes finding her, trying to save her, and watching her survive for 5 days in unbearable pain before she was gone. It's the single most gutting scene in the movie, because suddenly everything about Ave's silence, his solitude, his refusal to just let this go over a dog, makes horrifying sense. He already lost everything once, to a young man who was never made to face what he'd done. He is not going to let that happen twice. From here, Ave stops asking politely. He starts following the boys, quietly studying their routines around town, determined to understand exactly who he's dealing with. Harold notices him watching, and unlike his brother, guilt eats at him enough that he eventually approaches Ave directly, clearly desperate for some kind of resolution. Michael McCormick, however, doubles down, warning Ave to stay away from his sons or face legal trouble of his own. Ave ignores him. Tensions boil over during a baseball game, when Danny storms off after striking out and ends up in a face-to-face confrontation with Ave in the street. Danny swings a bat at him. Ave, faster and far more composed, disarms him and puts him flat on the ground in front of witnesses, warning him that this is the discipline his father should have given him years ago. That night, Ave's store burns to the ground. There's no proof it was the McCormicks. But there doesn't need to be. Ave loses his life's work in a single fire, and shortly after, he notices Pete Doust's family suddenly has enough money for expensive home renovations they couldn't previously afford. Everyone around Ave, Carrie included, starts urging him to stop, to protect what little he has left. Carrie herself gets pulled off the story by her editors. And that's when Ave makes the decision that changes everything. He digs Red's body back up, drives it to the McCormick house, and carries his dead dog to their front door, demanding that Danny finally answer for what he did. Guns come out almost immediately. In the chaos, Danny fires and grazes Ave's ear. Ave manages to disarm him, forcing Danny into the truck at gunpoint, intending to drive him straight to the sheriff himself. But Michael chases them down in his own vehicle, rams Ave's truck off the road, and Ave is left for dead in the wreckage. He isn't. Battered and bleeding, Ave drags himself out, finds a discarded gun nearby, and makes his way back toward the McCormick house one final time, running into a shaken Harold outside. Harold agrees to lead him to where Red's body was dumped. But Michael, Danny, and Pete catch up to them in the dark woods, and Danny opens fire again. What happens next unfolds in complete darkness, gunfire cutting through silence from every direction. When it's over, both Harold and Pete lie fatally wounded, killed in the very crossfire their own families created. Danny and Michael are both shot but alive. Ave, gravely injured, stays with Harold in his final moments, and then turns to Michael to deliver the news no father should ever have to hear, that his own family's violence just cost him one of his sons. In the aftermath, Ave slowly recovers from his injuries. Life without the store, without Red, without so much of what once filled his days, is unbearably quiet again. He reads a newspaper article Carrie wrote about everything that happened, and despite being moved by it, tears it up, unwilling to keep reliving the pain. Then Carrie shows up at his house one more time with news. The story helped her land a job at a major paper. And she brings him something else too. A puppy. Ave initially refuses, insisting he's too old, that he's already lost too much for one lifetime, that this fight cost lives it never should have. But Carrie leaves the puppy with him anyway. Alone with this new, tiny creature who has no idea what any of this cost, Ave watches him eat from a new bowl, hesitates, and then, for the first time since Red died, genuinely smiles. Not because the pain is gone. But because somehow, after everything, he still has room left in him to try again. And that's the story. A quiet old man who simply refused to let cruelty go unanswered, and paid an almost unbearable price to get there. If this story hit you the way it hit me, you already know why this film sticks with people long after the credits roll. So don't just scroll past this one, drop a comment below and tell me what part actually got to you the most, because I'll read every single one. And if you're still not subscribed after a story like this, I genuinely don't know what else it's going to take. This channel only keeps making videos like this because people like you show up for them, so hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and stick around, because there's another unforgettable story coming very soon.